That's really important for you, is owning your own rights and data, which probably takes us right into the way you look at NFTs. And I think you've described NFTs as stores of culture because they embody a moment in history. You've said, what is art? Art stores culture. Also, NFTs in the game is your identity, your history, etc. Can you talk to me about what is an NFT and how you see it from kind of the metaverse, and then how it also now it comes into our physical world?
So NFTs, as you pointed out, right, as stores of culture, well, they're cultures that are not necessarily only cultures meaning for like a mass community. They could also just be your personal culture, right? So for instance, like a wedding ring. Wedding rings are very personal to you. They're not super valuable maybe to the outside community, but to your own family and to your own very small community, they are priceless. But yet it's still made of silver or platinum, that maybe has an etching on it. That doesn't make it special, but we have something that treasures it because there's a story, there's a memory, there's something in there that means so much to us and maybe only us. Now, that's something you couldn't do in the digital world because we didn't own that asset. That asset was rented in effect. So we could maybe make an association, which we often do, but the actual ability to pass it on and really treasure that moment historically forever is difficult to do. When we think about historical artifacts, religious artifacts, for instance, of thousands of years ago, we treasure them very deeply because of the powerful idea that they embody, except that in and of itself, maybe that cloth or that material isn't special. But the powerful thing is that what it represents is unbeatable, right? Because it's really, as people, we're moved by these ideas and these concepts. Now let's talk about NFTs and why exactly they've become so powerful, just as they're parallel in the physical world. And it's because, when you look at Web 2, the one thing that survived, this ability to be truly free and openly composable, was actually open source. Everything is developed on open source today. Even the biggest of companies like a Google or Facebook, they all leverage open source today because it has the most weight. And it has the most weight because someone has built maybe a base code for, something very basic, straightforward. And then another person writes code on top. And actually what they're really doing, right, is they're adding, through the addition of new code on top of the old code, mixing their culture, which is really, a culture of code, but it's still culture because we're run, the way the system works, the UX, the interface, it's a representation of someone's idea of how it should be done, which is his or her culture. And that gets represented in the form of that code. That code has become so powerful because tens of millions of people contribute it on a regular basis that it is the reason why IBM has to use it. And is the reason also why a 5 or 10 person organization can now compete with the biggest of companies. And because of the fact that they have the world's knowledge at their fingertips in terms of code. And it also birthed companies like Google, like Huawei, like Lenovo, like pretty much every other company that's right, including the blockchain industry, right? If it wasn't for open source, actually the blockchain industry couldn't thrive. So that's a perfect example of how this open composability came from layers of experiences that were added on top of this to make this really data-rich, super sort of data powerful, shall we say, sort of super gravity effect in terms of the network effect that this code had. But there's a problem with open source code, which is only people who know how to code can sort of harness that, right? And most of the world doesn't know how to code still in this century. And, we try to solve this by doing hour of code and pushing all our children to learn how to code. And unfortunately, we can say that while we're getting mass awareness, we have failed in getting mass awareness of how to code, right? At the end of the day, we don't have 80% enrollment in computer science in college, right? And so most of the world is still not studying computer science. So what that means is that actually we created a digital elite. That digital elite is the people who know how to code, and they were able to benefit from that experience. Non-fungible tokens provides exactly the same framework in an open sort of a data structure where you can compose on top. Except now you can do it with assets that don't require you to code. It could be a piece of art, it could be music, it could be anything that your imagination will create and allow you to create, because you no longer need to know how to code to get it out there. And people can also freely compose on top of it. And as a result, the one asset that may have been produced for a certain fashion, someone else can invent and create something new and create new utility on top of it. That actually becomes really powerful because one asset may have been purpose for one thing, but now has 100 different use cases because it's used in 5 games. You could put a mortgage on it. You could lend it. It could be fractionalized. All these different use cases that are emerging through third parties simply because you own it and no longer needing permission from the platform. This opens up all new possibilities. But really, it's really doing what the physical world already had, but now in the digital context. And that's what non-fungible tokens are able to do. They're able to open this up to the rest of the world at a skill level that everyone can participate in, because non-fungible tokens are assets that you can participate in where you don't really have to know how to code. One of the favorite examples I like to put about this composability is like in the form of digital in cars, because we sell digital cars with Rev Racing, for instance, or Formula E. And what's interesting is that in the physical world, there's so many industries that have developed, on the side of people who own cars without any permission of the car itself, whether it's drivers, mechanics, service companies, or baby seats. Like, I love the story of baby seats, because cars, when Henry Ford made the car, he was never thinking about, well, this is a car where children are going to go. No, it was just 30 years afterwards that some people said, you know what, I think we can use this as a way to transport our children. We've got to do it in a way that's more convenient. Let's invent this clunky baby seat. And this was not done with permission from any car company, right? And now, interesting enough, car companies have to design the cars in a way that have safety standards that support the implementation of these baby seats. So you have a scenario where actually an external factor came in to influence the way you have to co-participate and co-create for the benefit of both, right? That's something that in a permission environment, you simply can't do, because some person who has no idea about, or empathy about the needs might just simply say, who needs this anyway? And they'll just say no to it, because, smaller organizations don't have the the innovation idea pool is so small that you won't imagine that's possible. You just nix it, which is what happens all the time in digital platforms. So basically refuse access on the basis of it's not suitable. But who said it wasn't suitable? Why are you the judge of this, right?